Ever get that, like, uneasy feeling? You know when you're meeting someone new for work, and it's like a little voice in the back of your head saying, maybe be careful. It's even stronger, right? When your job takes you to, like, places that aren't super well known or kind of off the beaten path.
Yeah, definitely. I think anyone who's worked a job where you're regularly meeting strangers, especially if it's in isolated places, can relate to that.
Exactly. And today we're diving into a case that I think really highlights that kind of everyday anxiety.
Okay, I'm interested.
So we're talking about Beverly Carter, a realtor in Little Rock, Arkansas.
A realtor, oh wow, yeah. Thinking about it, their job definitely fits that whole meeting strangers in weird places thing.
Totally. And what makes this case even more, I don't know, chilling is that Beverly was known in her community. Like everyone liked her. She was super successful and hardworking.
And Little Rock itself doesn't really have a reputation for being dangerous, right?
Yeah, not really. It's more of a everyone knows everyone kind of place, you know. So you wouldn't necessarily think of it as a hotbed for, well, violent crime.
Gotcha.
Okay, so picture this. September 25th, 2014. Beverly goes to show a house. Pretty routine stuff for her. But then she vanishes. Just gone.
No grace.
At first, no. Nothing seemed too out of place. Her car was found at the house, but her purse was inside. And there were some like tire tracks by the front door, plus signs that someone had been inside messing with stuff, disturbing the dust.
Interesting. I guess it's those little things, huh? They might seem normal at first, but could end up being super important.
Exactly. It's like those details were kind of whispering, hey, something's wrong here, but nobody was really piecing it together yet.
Yeah, I get it. So how did it all unfold?
So Beverly's husband and son start to worry, right? Because they can't reach her, which was completely out of character for her.
Oh,
She was even supposed to bring dinner home that night. Yeah, so her husband goes to the house where she was supposed to be showing it, and he finds her car, but no Beverly. And at that point, he knows something is seriously wrong.
makes sense. So that must have been when the police got involved.
Exactly. That's where Detective Jeffrey Allison comes in. And what's interesting about this case is that he was a local, he was part of the community.
Okay, so it becomes more personal for him, not just another case file.
Exactly. To add to the mystery, Beverly's husband starts getting these text messages, supposedly from Beverly, but the tone just felt off. Like it didn't sound like her at all.
And her family knew that.
Oh, they knew right away that it wasn't her. And this is where technology starts playing a bigger role. Investigators used, phone pings to try and track her phone.
Phone pings.
Yeah, basically they can see the location of a phone based on the signals it sends out to cell towers.
Makes sense. So what did the pings show?
They could see that her phone left the house she was showing, and then silence. Just nothing.
Well,
And of course, you know how it is with these cases. Suspicion immediately falls on the husband.
happens all the time, right?
Right. But Detective Allison was very thorough, and he quickly ruled him out.
Okay, so back to square one almost.
Well, kinda. But then this seemingly small detail leads to a huge breakthrough.
Ooh, I love those moments. Tell me more.
So Beverly was really organized. She kept notes about potential clients, and in those notes, she had a phone number. But turns out that number was, get this, spoofed.
Spoofed.
Yeah, like disguised to look like a different number, and the name connected to that number was Crystal Lowry. And investigators find out she's married to a guy, Aaron Lewis, who had a criminal history.
Whoa, hold on. So we've got a fake number, a suspicious wife, and a husband with a record. Talk about a red flag.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And get this, when police go to talk to Lewis, he leads them on a car chase, crashes his car, and then escapes from the hospital.
Wait, what? Are you serious?
Dead serious. It's like something straight out of a movie. But all that craziness, all those impulsive actions, actually ended up helping the investigation.
Really? How so?
Because Lewis was so, I guess, paranoid, he demanded that nobody record him when they questioned him.
But that backfired, didn't it?
Exactly, because, you see, Arkansas is a one-party consent state.
One-party consent, meaning...
Meaning only one person in a conversation has to know it's being recorded.
Oh, so they were able to get everything he said on tape.
Yep. And it was crucial because they got him to play a recorded message he'd made, and you could actually hear Beverly's voice on it. But what was strange was how calm she sounded.
Calm. In that situation, that's odd.
It is, right. And it probably speaks to, her trying to stay safe, thinking clearly under pressure, like don't antagonize your captor, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. So what happened next? Did this recording lead them to her?
Well, Lewis makes this offer. He says he'll lead the police to Beverly, but in exchange, he wants to use his phone.
Ooh, That's risky.
Yeah.
A real gamble for the investigators.
It was, but they felt like they had no choice. They had to try, right?
Yeah, I can understand that. Every second counts in these situations.
Exactly. But as it turned out, Lewis wasn't being truthful. He took them on two wild goose chases to places where Beverly wasn't.
Oh, man. That's just cruel.
Totally. And then to add another layer of weirdness to it all, Lewis starts talking about an accomplice, some guy named Trevor, and tries to blame him for things going wrong.
Trevor, trying to deflect blame, huh? Classic.
It did feel like that, a desperate move. And the whole Trevor thing led nowhere. But investigators did manage to find out from other sources that Lewis and Crystal Lowry had a history of scamming people.
Okay, now that's really disturbing. Paints a whole different picture of him.
For sure. But the real turning point came from it seemed like an offhand comment from Detective Allison.
Really? What was it?
He remembered Lewis had worked at this concrete plant, Argos, and he'd just casually asked him if he'd taken Beverly there.
Casually. Just like that.
Yep.
And Lewis's reaction was instant. You could tell it was like he'd hit a nerve. It was the confirmation Allison needed.
Wow. And did that lead them to Beverly?
It did. Sadly, it led them to her body. They found her near an old refrigerator on the Argos property. And the image that really stuck with me was they said her elbow was sticking out of the ground, just haunting.
Oh man, that's awful.
It is a real reminder of just how fragile life can be.
It's those little things.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that might seem insignificant at first, they can really make or break a case. Remember those tire tracks we talked about from the house?
Yeah, the ones by the front door. What about them?
Well, it turns out they were a perfect match for Lewis's truck.
Oh, wow. And the dust inside the house.
The forensics people, they looked at the patterns in the dust, and it was clear someone had been dragged across the floor.
That's crazy how, like, those tiny details can become so important, when you put them all together. Absolutely. And then the stuff they found near Beverly's body, it just sealed the deal. They found duct tape, some of her belongings. It all pointed to this wasn't random, it was planned.
Thinking about Detective Allison finding her like that, he was so invested in this case, it must have been just devastating.
It's hard to even imagine what he must have been going through. But, even with the grief, the horror of finding her, there was still a job to do. He actually confronted Lewis at the crime scene, showed him a photo of Beverly. I can't imagine how intense that moment must have been.
It's hard to fathom how someone can be so cold, so unfeeling. But then as the case goes to trial, things take another crazy turn. Lewis decides to represent himself.
Whoa, seriously. That's a bold move, to say the least. Especially in a case like this.
Right, but he had this arrogance about him, like he really thought he could outsmart everyone.
So what was his defense?
Get this. He tries to use the evidence that the prosecution gathered to say that he and Beverly have like a consensual sexual encounter and that somehow led to her death.
Wait, what? Is he serious? I mean, that's just awful. Trying to blame the victim even after she's gone.
It's a tactic we see sometimes, sadly, in cases involving violence against women. Trying to muddy the waters, shift the blame, attack the victim's character.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But thankfully the jury saw right through it.
They did. Found him guilty of capital murder and kidnapping. He got a life sentence, which, I mean, it doesn't bring Beverly back, but at least there's some sense of justice.
Some sense, yeah. And Crystal Lowry, Lewis's wife.
She ended up taking a plea deal, testified against Lewis, got a reduced sentence, 30 years.
It's a tough one, right? Her testimony helped put Lewis away, but she was still deeply involved in the crime. Makes you think about the justice system, fairness, all of that.
Absolutely. And the most chilling part to me was Lewis admitting later that he targeted Beverly just because she was a woman, alone. It's terrifying how random it all was, how vulnerable people, especially women, are in their everyday lives.
Yeah, that really hits home. Anyone could have been in her shoes. But thankfully, there's more to Beverly's story than just the tragedy. Her son, Carl Jr., he took that grief and turned it into something positive.
Yeah, I read about that. The Beverly Carter Foundation. Amazing what he's doing to try to prevent this from happening to others.
He's doing so much. Safety training programs for realtors, pushing for better security measures, even helped create a wearable device so realtors can discreetly call for help if they feel threatened. It's all about empowering people.
It's like combining technology and proactive steps. Really smart. It's good to see that kind of change happening.
Totally. And, beyond all the technology and stuff, sometimes our best tools are intuition. If something feels off about a client, the situation, trust your gut. Don't be afraid to say no. Reschedule anything to feel safe. 100% agree. Safety comes first. Always. No meeting, no deal is worth putting yourself at risk.
Beverly's story has really pushed people to talk about safety for realtors, but there's so much more to learn from this case, for everyone. What do you think? What bigger changes need to happen to make workplaces safer?
Well, for starters, we've got to tackle the root of the problem, those societal issues that fuel violence against women.
Challenging stereotypes, pushing for equality, building a culture of respect, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's a deep-rooted problem.
Yeah.
But in terms of things we can do right now, companies have to step up, put stricter safety rules in place for employees who work alone, meet clients off-site. Things like background checks, mandatory check-ins, maybe even providing safety devices.
Building that culture of safety, yeah, from top to bottom.
Right. And let's not forget law enforcement. They need support, the resources, and the training to investigate these crimes properly. They have to be able to respond quickly and effectively.
It sends a message that this won't be tolerated.
Exactly. So it's really multifaceted, right? Individual responsibility, societal change, and then organizations and law enforcement stepping up to prioritize safety.
Working together. And going back to Detective Allison, remember how we talked about him being covered in dirt from the crime scene? Well, there's actually I guess you could say a happy ending to that part of the story.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
He ended up marrying the officer, the one who first found Beverly's body. They were both narcotics officers.
Wow. Finding love in the midst of all that darkness, that's amazing.
It is. It's a reminder that hope and resilience can exist even in the darkest of places.
And it speaks to that bond you see in law enforcement, those shared experiences that connect people on such a deep level.
Absolutely. Beverly's story is heartbreaking, but it also pushes us to think. What can we do to be safer? What can we do to make our workplaces safer? What really stood out to you in all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we have to be informed. We have to know the risks. The more we understand, the better we can protect ourselves. And, the Beverly Carter Foundation is an incredible resource, but the lessons from this case, they go way beyond just real estate.
So true. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Beverly Carter case, I hope everyone listening will take away a renewed sense of awareness and commitment to safety for themselves and for others. Remember, knowledge is power.
And if there's one thing I want people to remember, it's this. If you ever feel unsafe, don't hesitate to speak up. Trust your gut, set boundaries, and use every resource you have to stay safe.
Beverly's legacy continues through her son and the foundation, but it's up to all of us to keep talking about safety, to push for change.
Let's honor her memory by working to create a world where everyone feels safe and empowered in their work.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe. It's easy to kind of fall into that trap of thinking, oh, that'll never happen to me. But Beverly's case is a real wake-up call. It can happen to anyone, and we can't afford to be, complacent about safety. So, for folks out there, especially if they work alone a lot or meet clients in more isolated places, what can they do to be safer? What are some practical things?
The key is to be proactive. And think about it as like layers of protection.
Okay, layers, I like that.
So the first layer is awareness, right? Just knowing that, hey, your job might put you at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you start building up those layers. Like for realtors specifically, they can, be more thorough when screening clients,
Yeah.
always share their schedule with someone they trust, things like that.
Yeah, like building a safety net.
Exactly. And technology is a huge part of it now. Think about that wearable device that the Beverly Carter Foundation helped develop. That's a game changer, not just for realtors, but for anyone in a similar situation.
For sure. But tech aside, sometimes the best tool we have is our gut feeling. If something feels off about a person, a situation, trust that instinct. There's no shame in saying no, rescheduling, whatever it takes to feel safe.
Absolutely. Your safety is the priority. No deal, no meeting is worth risking that. It's about setting boundaries.
Beverly's case, it's really sparked this conversation about safety for realtors, but the things we can learn from it, they go way beyond just one profession, right? What about bigger picture stuff? Societal changes that could help create safer environments for everyone.
Well, we can't ignore the big elephant in the room, the societal issues that contribute to violence against women. That's got to be addressed.
So changing attitudes, pushing for equality.
Exactly. It's a huge, complex problem. But there are also more practical things we could do. Like companies can step up and put stricter safety rules in place, especially for employees who work alone or meet clients off-site. Think background checks for clients, mandatory check-in procedures, even providing employees with those personal safety devices.
Building that culture of safety into the workplace itself.
Exactly. And then, of course, we can't forget the role of law enforcement. They need the resources, the training to effectively investigate these crimes. A strong, swift response is key.
So it's really all about everyone working together, right? Individual responsibility, societal change, and organizations, law enforcement, all playing their part.
Absolutely. Safety is a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
And we can all do something to create safer communities and workplaces.
As we wrap up our deep dive today into the Beverly Carter case, I hope everyone listening will take away that sense of, hey, we need to be aware and we need to be committed to safety for ourselves and for others. Knowledge is power.
You got it. And honestly, if there's one thing I really want people to remember from all of this, it's never hesitate to speak up if you feel unsafe. Trust those instincts, set boundaries, and use every resource you've got to protect yourself.
Beverly's legacy lives on, not just through the foundation, but through every conversation we have about safety, every change we make to protect ourselves and others.
It's about honoring her memory by working towards a world where everyone feels safe and empowered to do their jobs.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe.